This is the Fitness Wisdom Podcast.
Hello and welcome back to another exciting episode of the Fitness Wisdom Podcast. Today we have a returning guest, Carrie Bennett. She's a true expert on the field of circadian and quantum biology. She was on episode 34 of the Fitness Wisdom Podcast, so most definitely go and listen to that. In that episode, we dived into the fascinating nature of water inside of the body and how that differs from the water that we drink. Now, today we're going to continue our conversation a little bit on that, but we're also going to talk about different strategies, tools, and ways to bring the water that we drink more back to life so it's more biocompatible with our biology. But we're also going to dive into the fascial system and its connection with energy transfer, production, and the ether as well. So welcome back to the show, Carrie. It's a pleasure to have you.
Oh, thanks for having me back on. I'm excited to chat with you again, Andreas.
Yeah, you're such a wealth of knowledge. And last time we just only scratched the surface. I feel like this is like a part two, and I'm sure that we're going to do many, many more parts in the future. So why don't we start off with the fascial system? And maybe we can describe to people, you call it the liquid crystalline matrix, or that it's our sixth sense. What do you mean by that?
Yeah, I've got a background in movement, right? So I got a background as a former athlete, but then personal trainer, Pilates instructor, and as well as a massage therapist. And so I just started to recognize that our body is too complex. The way we interact with our environment, especially at the level that is below the level of our conscious awareness, below the level of our senses, we are too complex and respond in such subtle but important ways to our environment to solely rely on our senses. And I thought to myself, what else? Like, what are the other quote unquote sensing mechanisms that we may have so that my body can adapt in real time at the larger mechanism of my entire body as an integrated system, but also just at that smaller and smaller level of even how does this cell in the tip of my finger know what's happening with this cell in the back of my brain and that one at the bottom of my foot? Like, how are we all interconnected? And that's where I started to dive into the fact that there's it's a very underappreciated system in the body, and that's the fascial system. When I was in, when I was in undergraduate school, so I was getting my bachelor's degree, I was in an anatomy class, and I distinctly remember my anatomy professors saying, "Oh, you see that webby type stuff on top of the organs? Just cut that away. That's not important." But I thought to myself, I know, right? But I thought to myself, it's literally everywhere. Like, it's literally all over the entire, every sample that I'm looking at has this all over it. So how is that unimportant? And then I fast forward that to when I was in massage therapy school shortly after I graduated, and I started to recognize that when I would find parts in the body that were tight or dense, it felt like literally a rock. And as I would hold acupressure, which was my main modality, where I would find a knotted spot and allow my finger to sink into that, and then over the course of 2 to 5 minutes, it would soften. Almost like, and it wasn't just a, slowly soften. It would literally feel like I was on a rock. And then once a critical time threshold was reached, my finger would literally sink in so deep. And I thought to myself, what's going on there? And that's where I began to look at the body, the missing organ system of the body that was never studied, which is the fascial network, or the connective tissue. And I think one of the reasons why it's not been appreciated as an integrated organ system is because it's called different things depending on the scale that we're studying it. So as a movement therapist, someone would call it the fascia or the connective tissue. Someone studying the fascial network outside of the cell at that tiny, tiny level would call it the extracellular matrix. Those who study it inside of the cell would call it the cytoskeleton. And those who study it in relation to the DNA would call it the nuclear matrix. But what we're talking about is just finer and finer degradations of the exact same substance. It's literally a web that connects us all. And I began to realize that web was structured in a way that it would create these triple helices, and it was surrounded by water. And it wasn't just any type of water, but it was water in that phase that we were talking about, that exclusion zone structured water. And that meant that the properties of the connective tissue itself, along with the hydration shell of water that surrounds it, forms this entire liquid crystalline matrix inside of our bodies. And it blew my mind that I had never looked at it this way, but it absolutely describes what I was seeing when I was cutting away the dehydrated, dead connective tissue in anatomy class, to recognizing how one way to essentially rehydrate areas during massage when I was holding sustained pressure on those dense areas of connective tissue and feeling it as a gelled-like matrix. And so that was just my first entry point into understanding that we've got this interconnected system, and I don't think it's been understood in anywhere near the capacity we need to understand it. And I also think to myself, if this system is everywhere, what would happen if we optimize this entire web with correct hydration strategies, with correct maybe movement practices? Could we see transformative health outcomes? And absolutely we can. And that's just the tip of the iceberg.
Did you know that muscle weighs more than body fat in terms of volume? This is why someone can look like this or like this and be the exact same weight on the scale, making weight tracking not the most reliable metric when it comes to measuring progress. So building muscle while losing body fat can massively influence the number on the scale, leaving you feeling frustrated and discouraged. This is why I love the Home Body Pod, an at-home full body analyzer that gives you over 40 actionable health metrics, allow you to get a true insight into your body composition, from body fat percentage, lean muscle mass, cellular hydration, visceral fat, and so much more. So if you're serious about your health and fitness and leveling up your results, you definitely need to check it out. The link is in the description below, and if you use the promo code MobilityFitness at checkout, you can get a massive discount on your order as well.
Wow, what a great breakdown. And what you just mentioned there, basically, that all the different areas or people who are studying the fascial system, they are seeing it all as different parts in their own little world, like we do when we are studying to become a gastroenterologist. We just focus on the gut, or cardiologist is just focusing on the heart, or, you know, a neurologist focusing on the nervous system. And specialists, unfortunately, or anyway, not all specialists, but some specialists, they tend to forget that the whole body is like a system. Right. And I love the way that you are describing the body. You're basically saying that this is just a whole body wide communication network, that all of those different systems are acknowledged as one system. So since it's acknowledged as one system, it doesn't play only the role in energy transfer in terms of mechanical transfer in movement, but clearly there is something so much greater going on there. And you mentioned something very important there about the water. That's the hydration shell around that network. What happens when that hydration shell becomes dehydrated, and what kind of things dehydrate that hydration shell in the fascia?
Great question. Great question. And so to understand this, I first want people to recognize what actually forms the physical communication channels that actually form when we have appropriately hydrated connective tissue. What you look at, what we will oftentimes call it collagen, right? Collagen is a main component of this system, and collagen forms these little kind of woven chains, and you have 3 of those woven chains connected together, and you form a triple helix. Then when you have 6 of these little bundles of triple helices, essentially around one major one, that's the basic unit of, I would say, collagen quantum communication. Because when that unit forms, when you have the collagen that's hydrated, you actually form what are called water nanotubes. Literally tubes made up of just this gelled water that connect every part of the body to every other part of the body. And so we typically think of, okay, if I need to transport something from this area of the body to that area of the body, we think in terms of blood flow. We think in terms of maybe lymphatic flow. But now we have literally a tube through which we can funnel energy and information. And we're not transporting physical substances through it. We're transferring things like light, charge, so positive charge, negative charge. And that means that as we talked about before, if the health of my cells is dependent on having adequate negative charge, then this is the means by which we can describe things like earthing and grounding. We can literally pick up Earth's negative charge, and it can funnel wherever it needs to go in order to give that charge to an area that's lacking. It's essentially the wiring through which we funnel that charge. So if that's the case, and my body is interconnected, and this is a charge distributor, then what would be things that disrupt it? Well, anything that disrupts collagen from forming that triple helix. And unfortunately, glyphosate is a huge player here, because collagen is made up of a very key amino acid sequence, which is glycine being every third amino acid. So 33% of collagen is the specific amino acid called glycine. The other two are typically proline and hydroxyproline. And we can talk a little bit about that if we want to in deuterium, but that might be a completely other topic. But that being said...
Oh, yeah, I would love that.
Okay, sure. But that being said, glycine's a very specific amino acid. It's the only amino acid that can either gel water to make that structured water, or it can degel the water and make it that bulk water. And the fact that it's every third amino acid in collagen means likely what's happening is, in order to funnel the charge where it's needed, the glycine can either be gelled, which will funnel the charge, or it can be more in the bulk form, which will prevent the charge from funneling through. So it's like a switchboard operator, and it can say, okay, you go here, you go here. So glycine is so key. Now, unfortunately, glyphosate, found in Roundup as a pesticide, can be that in glyphosate, that's called a glycine analog, or it's something that looks very similar to glycine to our bodies. And so if our body says, okay, we need some collagen repair here, but doesn't have adequate glycine to do it, we are full of glyphosate, unfortunately. And it can easily pull the glyphosate and put the glyphosate in to the glycine spot. But glyphosate cannot gel and degel water. Glyphosate really just degels the water. It will not allow structured water to form in any, at least not to as great of a capacity as glycine. It's very detrimental. Wow. And not only that, it's the wrong size in order for the triple helix to form appropriately. So now you have an issue where you're not having these triple helices and these bundles to form the water nanotubes, and you don't have the switching of glycine to gelled water to degelled water to be able to funnel the charge as like a switchboard operator inside of the body. So that means, that leads to, as you can imagine, lack of energy channeling throughout the body, lack of information channeling throughout the body, which means that my body is no longer as quantum coherent, and quantum coherence is simply a system, an integrated system where every part of the system knows what everything else is doing. And so if that pathway is affected, my body is no longer as coherent, and that means that leads to worse health outcomes ultimately.
Wow, that's crazy. Yeah, so it makes you feel like, did they actually intentionally make glyphosate in this way that it replaces the glycine in your collagen? Did they really think it that well through, or is it just by accident? I don't know. So for example, if you were to, well, I probably already know the answer to this, but I'm just wondering, if you were to take, let's say, a glycine supplement, let's say, and you overdosed on glycine, do you think that could help somehow remove some of the glyphosate which is in your collagen matrix and replace it? Could it do that? Or would you need to remove the stressor of the glyphosate completely from your life and then start to rebuild your collagen network back up from scratch?
I think it's like a both and. I think you got to do both things at the same time. So there are ways that we can, right. There are companies that are showing different ways to remove glyphosate from the body. And then giving, you can remove it from the physical tissue. So essentially bind it and help the liver process and eliminate it. We can then make sure that we eat glyphosate free food, right? Which is not always certified organic. Yeah. I know you get this, right? But I love finding small local regenerative farmers and talking to those farmers, because they can't afford to go through the whole, rigmarole of getting certified organic, but they actually do better in terms of their growing practices, in terms of their regenerative farming, their permaculture, electroculture, those types of things. So I highly encourage people to explore their local farmers who are growing without chemicals. And so we're going to try to pull it from the body's tissues. We're going to try to eat foods that don't contain it. Then we do want to make sure that if someone is, and I can give you some of the symptoms I'm seeing in people who really need glycine supplementation, but then perhaps a period of glycine supplementation is needed to make sure we really give the body what it needs in order to say, okay, we're purging the glyphosate, but let's put the correct amino acid in its place.
And you talked a bit previously about collagen and the deuterium aspect as well. So, for example, when you're breaking down the collagen network, are you freeing deuterium in the system, causing havoc to the mitochondria? Is that what's happening?
Not necessarily per se, right? I actually think that what our collagen is trying to do is hoard deuterium for us, because deuterium is a very strong bond, right? Deuterium is a form of hydrogen, heavier version of hydrogen that has a really strong connection to oxygen, meaning that in areas of my body where I need to maintain structure or force distribution or tensegrity, I want to have deuterium. That would be my connective tissue network. I absolutely need it there. So I actually, when people talk about, potentially collagen being high in deuterium, I found collagen supplementation can actually be very beneficial, because those specific amino acids that we consume in collagen go to the collagen in our bodies to help put deuterium where it needs to be to create strength in this tensegrity system. And so I'm not anti-collagen supplementation in any capacity. I've actually found it to be very beneficial for people. But the issue with glyphosate is glyphosate dysregulates the enzyme system that sends just the proteome version of hydrogen, the light hydrogen, to the mitochondria. And so that's where glyphosate also starts to create issues, because we have this beautiful TCA cycle where essentially we're trying to strip protons or strip hydrogen from the food that we eat and then send that to the mitochondria, where they could take the electrons and funnel it through the electron transport chain and the protons and build that proton gradient in the intermembrane space to make water and ATP. And glyphosate will dysregulate that whole system. And so you're more likely to send a deuterium version of hydrogen to the mitochondria. Again, glyphosate is a huge player in all of this.
Struggling with gut issues? Did you know that your circadian rhythms and the type of light you're exposed to massively influences your gut health and microbiome? The gut heals and repairs itself at night in the absence of blue light and in the presence of melatonin. Another essential reason why you should be blocking and minimizing blue light after sunset. Artificial blue light activates the sympathetic nervous system and keeps us stuck in fight and flight. We cannot heal and regenerate in a sympathetically dominant state. Artificial blue light has been known for contributing to gut dysbiosis. On the other hand, UV, red and near-infrared wavelengths of light have been shown to positively influence health and diversity of the gut microbiome. I will highlight in detail in the description what all the different wavelengths of light are doing to your gut. A healthy gut and microbiome is essential for brain and mental health, energy levels, metabolism, digestion and absorption of foods, skin health, robust immune system response, regulating inflammation, nervous system regulation, weight management, and so much more. This is why I make sure to get my belly and entire body out in the sun every single day, as well as use my favorite red and UV therapy panels from EMRtech.com. Check out the panels that I use on a daily basis to improve my overall health and well-being, and use the promo code MobilityFitness at checkout for a massive 20% discount.
So very important then is to just make sure that we are eating organic and as local as possible and seasonal, just to eliminate as much of the glycogen consumption as much as we can. And of course, to make sure that we wash our produce as well with baking soda or vinegar if we are not buying organic and local, seasonal foods, because that helps to reduce the glycogen load. The glyphosate load so much. And I know that glycine is a super beneficial amino acid, because in the past I used to take it as well for sleep. And I found that I used to sleep so much better when I used to take at least 3 to 10 grams in the evening. My body temperature would drop significantly in the night, so I would have so much more better sleep because of that. And the sleep was so much deeper as well. Do you know what's actually going on there? Why does it help sleep so much?
Well, I mean, it is a calming amino acid too, right? So we need it to be able to regulate the GABA system. So in the brain, we've got the GABA and glutamate system that's kind of on a seesaw. And these days, a lot of people are over into the neuroexcited state, the glutamate state. And because I think of glyphosate dysregulating this GABA system, people can't go into those deeper waves of sleep. You can't turn on that GABAergic system. And so I find that's absolutely one key sign to me that someone needs glycine supplementation would be they either can't wind their brain down for sleep. They're kind of always in that heightened alert state, whether it's at night or just during the day. And if they do take glycine and they find it really beneficial, I say that's a key sign that your body is saying, okay, like if you get better sleep from taking glycine, by all means, please do, because that glycine then can go to so many to support so many aspects of health, including the collagen system. Now, the other thing that I see in people who I think really need to consider glycine supplementation would be people who have things like hypermobility or EDS type symptoms, because what I'm seeing here is that their tensegrity system is not strong enough. And so likely there's a misfolding of the triple helix happening. When that triple helix, remember, so there's a clustering of symptoms I see with hypermobility. Yes, I see someone who is actually hypermobile, and I was very hypermobile myself. I've dislocated or subluxed joints, different joints in my body over 40 times in my life. And so I was dealing with hypermobility as well, likely due to excessive glyphosate consumption as a child. That's when it started to get really sprayed in America. And so we didn't know any differently. But with hypermobility, yes, there's hypermobility, but now I'm seeing a clustering of symptoms that hypermobility ties to immune system, like an overreactive immune system. It ties to anxiety. And so that clustering of symptoms, if I see someone hypermobile, having a hyperreactive immune system and anxiety, also indicates to me that there's potentially glyphosate toxicity and they could benefit from glycine supplementation.
Yeah, and I don't think people even need to take like a supplement per se. For example, what I love to do is to consume like Jello on a daily basis. I have a really big amount of Jello, and I also sometimes I have like a collagen supplement as well. So as you mentioned, that in the collagen itself, there is like how much percent? Isn't it like something like 70% glycine or something like that? So it's a really high amount. So I feel like getting it from a natural source is a really, really nice way. But of course, if people don't enjoy eating animal-based products, of course, then there is supplementation involved as well. Plus, it tastes really nice, the supplement as well. When you put it in a drink, it's really, really sweet. So it's actually
sweet,
pretty
yeah.
awesome. Yeah, you mentioned earlier about the energy traveling through the fascial system, through these what did you call them? These nanotubules. Yeah. So basically,
water nanotubes, yeah.
I can imagine then we talked a little bit about the grounding being so beneficial, and that is the way via the electrons from the earth getting into the body, going to wherever they need to go to heal and regenerate the system, or wherever there is an energy lack, basically, right? Because electrons always flow from a point of high concentration to a point of low concentration. So if we have somewhere in the body where there is a lack of voltage or a lack of electrons, then we are going to get way more energy in that specific area, I can imagine. And so how does this tie into then? How does this collagen network tie into it being our sixth sense? How does are we able to extract energy from the ether, like from the air around us, like beyond grounding? Do you know?
Yeah, sure. So a couple of things on this one. Number one, everything that we see that is living and non-living is made up of this fundamental substance called the ether. So we are intimately connected with it. And what the ether simply is we got to picture it almost like as a fluid. In the same way that fish don't realize that they're swimming in water, it's just always been there. What we consider to be air to our perception is actually a fluid that is called the ether. And this fluid not only surrounds us, but it penetrates us. And literally, it's the fundamental substance upon which everything is made. And so, yes, we can actually then extract more of this substance into our body, which for millennia through various cultures has been associated with an increase in life force energy, vital energy, prana, chi, those types of things. And so 100% that's the case. What I want to talk about before we go into maybe the ways that we do that is the fact that, as I alluded to before, this hydrated collagen system is a liquid crystal, right? It's in that structured liquid crystalline state. And whenever I want to know more about like what can liquid crystals do? How is this important? I always go into the physics research associated with technology, because what I am finding is that modern technology is simply a reverse engineering of what's already happening inside of the human body. So it's like, okay, so now so then I jumped into the research to show that liquid crystals are huge data stores. Not only can they store data, but they can take data in one form, say light or thought or some form of frequency and vibration, and literally transmute it into a different form and then send it back. So we're basically these data storage centers. Liquid crystals are also called broadband antenna. Meaning, antenna back in the day, I don't know if you remember like the antenna on the TVs, like the old school TVs that had like that, right? There's these wires coming up and you could kind of like have to move the wires to get the signal a little bit stronger. Those are a specific type of antenna. That's called a dipole antenna, basically. And that antenna can only attract certain signals, right? And it really would have to manipulate the position to get the strong signal. Whereas a broadband antenna, where it can receive all sorts of frequency information. And so as these liquid crystalline beings, not only are we storing data or pulling in data and information, but then we're transmitting it. And now we're antenna as well. So we can collect all of the frequency information that we can access and pull it into our bodies for our bodies either to utilize to our benefit, and oftentimes, sometimes not to our benefit, right? That's why I think wireless radiation, especially, has an affinity for us, for liquid crystals, right? For these water beings that we are, and has been shown to diminish and reduce the amount of liquid crystallinity, the exclusion zone water that we have inside of us. So now this gave me a better framework to understand how I might be responding to my environment as a sixth sense without me even having conscious awareness of it. It's how I can connect to the Schumann resonance and organize my brainwaves. It's how I can sense the Earth's geomagnetic pulse, and that organizes my breath rate and my heart rate rhythm. It's how my thoughts are impacting my health. It's how the people I choose to be around, the media I choose to consume. It's how all of these things have the potential to be health promoters or health detractors, depending on what I'm being exposed to and how my body is perceiving it. So this concept of this entire body full of this liquid crystalline antenna really reframed how I understood a lot of things when it came to my body responding to my environment, and why my clients who were always in that stress mindset, or who were always watching the news and the news was always promoting fear, how that was impacting their body, because it was literally giving their liquid crystalline antenna a fear signal all the time, which would put their nervous system into high alert and fight or flight. So, a lot of cool awarenesses when you understand that we are these liquid crystalline beings constantly interacting with our environment, both our internal environment, thoughts, emotions, even the movement of energy flow in our body, to what's happening in the world around us. A perfect example here, Andreas, yesterday, it was fun. I got to take my son to a football camp at a really big university about an hour away. And, it was a day of camp outside, but we were on AstroTurf, number one. So I was not able to connect to Earth's energy because of the AstroTurf. And number two, during the summer months on these university campuses, they do a lot of construction because it's the slow time in terms of students being there. And so I spent 10 hours not connected to Earth's energy and hearing low level, not even low level, some high construction activity, literally chainsaws and like all day long. And at the end of the day, I mean, I was consciously aware of it, but like, at some point you tune it out because it's like, okay, that's just noise, and I got to try to focus on what my true signal is, like focus on my son and the what's going on at the camp. But at the end of the day, I was more exhausted than I had been in years. And I'm surmising it's twofold. I'm thinking it must be because I was surrounded by this noise that my body was constantly perceiving as a threat. And I was unable to connect strongly to the signals that brings my body back into regulation, which would be when I'm earthed and grounded, I can connect to the Schumann resonance and the geomagnetic field more strongly, which will bring my body back into regulation, my brain waves back into that more alpha range. And without it, I was in like this high beta state all day, which really just wore me out. And so this liquid crystalline body of ours is always picking up on these things and responding accordingly.
Yeah, what I've understood based on everything that you just said there is that our autonomic nervous system is always listening. And it's actually really, really cool when you think about it, because how on earth does just standing in a living body of water or on grass all of a sudden just change your heart rate and make you feel better it seems like for no reason, right? But clearly on a quantum level, on a level which our consciousness has a hard time in perceiving or understanding through our 5 senses that we have. But you are saying that the 6th sense is the one that is detecting or picking up this information, whether there is harmonious or chaotic. And so therefore we can shift our nervous system state in the sympathetic or parasympathetic, and the longer we stay in each direction, well, it always, it's better to always have a balance, right? And to be more in a parasympathetic state. So that makes you realize how important it is actually to take care of your environment. We tend to think a lot about our internal environment by taking supplements and exercising, eating the right food and drinking water. But what about the environment that we're living in? What about our bedroom? Is it like peaceful? Is it quiet at night? Is it dark at night? Is there these non-native electromagnetic fields, like you mentioned? Is there maybe some construction nearby or something like this that is all the time going on in the background? And if it is, then, we are all the time being on a little bit on the edge and we don't realize it. And eventually we come down with some kind of cold, sickness, or even some autoimmune condition if we've been stuck in a sympathetic state for years and years and years, and we never allow our body basically to detoxify, regenerate, and basically to heal itself, because we know that a parasympathetic state is actually what is necessary for all of those things to take place. There was one more thing I wanted to mention. Oh yeah, do you think that the way that the collagen and the liquid crystalline matrix is organized, it is the reason why we are able to pick up this information from the environment? The physical structure itself.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I truly believe it is a huge it's our main antenna for the information that we cannot see, hear, smell, taste, and touch. Now, with noise pollution, I absolutely could hear it, but at a certain point, I tuned it out.
Yes.
But I know my
Yes.
liquid crystalline antenna, which is I believe our autonomic nervous system is responding to the inputs yes, through our 5 senses, but also the inputs into that liquid crystalline antenna. Because of and we have got this interconnected fascial web. There's a lot of information about how the fascia has interoception itself, so it can communicate essentially to the autonomic nervous system to shift and change things like even our emotional state, our emotional balance. And so I truly believe that this water is what is perceiving it all, and the ability of then these liquid crystals to pull in information and transmute it and transmit it in a way that my body can then respond to. And all my body is looking to do is, number one, optimize my safety. And if I'm getting the correct safety signals, optimize my fertility. That's really the name of the game. And so if I'm never in a sense, if the frequency environment that I can't hear, and I can't, like I said, smell, taste, touch, or see, but if my frequency environment is threatening, my body will always be in fight or flight, and my hormone balance will tank. Because my body will say, no, now is not the time for Carrie to be fertile and have a baby. There's a continuous threat going on in her environment right now. And so I think this is the liquid crystalline matrix and liquid crystalline antenna gives us a framework where we can talk to our clients about, hey, by the way, this is why having the news on in the background all day long, even though you're tuning it out and you're doing other things, that's why that may be keeping you from optimum health because of the information that you're picking up on. Or this is why having your Wi-Fi router right next to your desk may be just regulating your hormones and your ability to heal, right? These are things that people just don't think of. And I think the liquid crystalline matrix gives us a starting point for that conversation.
And for example, these negative things that you talked about that can destructure the water in our body to make it more into this bulk-like water instead of it being this beautiful gel-like exclusion zone water. Do you think that changes the geometry of the collagen matrix? So, for example, in nature, a couple of years ago, I paid attention that in nature, everything is pretty much a spiral. And I was just on a bus one day and I was looking outside and I was trying to think, what shape does life have? And I was trying to think, it's not a square, it's not a triangle, it seems pretty circular, but then I noticed when I look closer that most things are a spiral, right? And when you look at the body as well, like pretty close under a microscope, you notice that most things are, like spherical and spiral-like. And do you think that these negative things which are impacting our health and our collagen matrix, do you think they distort the shape of the fascial system and therefore diminish our ability to sense our environment properly?
Yeah, completely. You can't form those water nanotubes if you can't hold that correct shape, those triple helices. So anything, and those triple helices are dependent on that structured water, right? So anything that will impact the collagen or the water will impair the ability to form those water nanotubes and therefore this body-wide communication system.
That's wild. Wow. I would like to move on to some questions which I asked you in the previous episode, which actually got cut out. And I don't necessarily know why, if they were trying to censor us or something, but let's try again, shall we?
Let's see it.
So last time. So last time you were talking a little bit about GMOs and how that can also like influence the water in our body. So what's the problem with consuming GMO food, and what does the water look like in GMO food, and what is that doing to the water inside of our body?
Well, this is perfect, right? Because we were just talking about GMO foods were invented essentially in order to withstand a lot of Roundup or a lot of glyphosate, so that and have an aggressive, like you could yield more essentially. You could douse it with pesticides, douse these plants with pesticides, but they themselves are unaffected supposedly. However, you brought this up, and it was something that really I guess been unconsciously or subconsciously aware of. But the difference between the gelled water inside of a GMO tomato versus, say, the gelled water inside of an organically, regeneratively grown tomato, very different. The regenerative one, it's just full of that really, it's like gelled water, right? That structured water. Whereas the other one is way more runny and fluid, like it's in more of a liquid state. So that's the difference between consuming water or consuming a food that's been grown with glyphosate, and glyphosate impairs the ability of even that plant, even that vegetable or fruit, to form structured water, versus the one that was not exposed to glyphosate. And that's us too. If we are full of glyphosate, that impairs our body's ability to form this gelled water. And so I think one of the ways that we really can hydrate ourselves is by consuming water-rich produce that has not been sprayed with glyphosate, because that gelled water, it is exactly what mimics the water inside of our bodies. And so we'll get the hydration and the healthy charge that we talked about before that comes with it.
Yeah, so that was one of my questions last time as well, that is the water inside food actually structured water like the same inside our body? And that's so cool to know, because it makes you realize, wow, I can just eat some watermelon or any kind of really watery fruits, which is actually local and organic, and that's going to benefit my biology to the highest level. And I also noticed that when I eat those types of foods, I'm way less thirsty for actual water. I feel like I rarely need to drink, and especially if I'm getting grounded and being in the sunlight. But if I'm spending a lot of time close to EMFs, if I have to do a lot of work indoors, if I haven't been grounded as much throughout the day, I feel so much more dehydrated no matter what type of food I've eaten. But of course, even if I eat more water type foods, more water-based foods, I feel definitely more hydrated compared to eating more drier type of foods, right? And so basically also as well, you mentioned that the exclusion zone water, it holds on to the energy in the fruits or in the body. And so that would also make sense that why you also want to consume local produce and seasonal, because if it's picked right from the ground right there and then, and it's not genetically modified, the water inside will be more structured, as you mentioned, but also will contain more life force energy, which is going to add more value to our biology, right?
Absolutely. The name of the game, I think, in our bodies. So this, again, we've been led astray by thinking that food is what sustains us, like the calories or even the macronutrients in the food. The charge of the food is what sustains us, because you'll funnel that negative and positive charge to the mitochondria, where they transform it into water and ATP. And so that's why I consider earthing a nutrient. It's why I consider sunlight a nutrient, because it is giving us access to more negative charge. And it's not that we just need negative, we do need key areas of positive charge as well. But what we're talking about when it comes to earthing and sunlight, that will facilitate both. We also then have to think of, well, what are other ways that across millennia, various cultures have known that you could pull in charge? And what we would call charge, when I think about light or when I think about charge flow from the earth, that's electromagnetic charge, right? That's a version of charge that's called electromagnetism. What the ancient cultures have known is that there's another version of charge that's called subtle energy, or like I said, it's been called prana or chi or ki. And this subtle energy is also a nourishment for our bodies. That's the type of energy that we, yes, can extract from the ether, but it's also the type of energy that the plants will extract from the ether to grow more robust. And grow more nutrient dense and have that gelled water. So there's ways, like for example, Konstantin Karatkov has studied this subtle energy in humans and plants for decades now, and has found that the subtle energy that you could measure in an organically grown, let's say, strawberry versus a GMO strawberry is completely different. The GMO strawberry is almost completely devoid of life force energy. Yes, it still has the biochemistry associated with it, but the energetic quality of it, the energetic nourishment, is lacking. Whereas the organically, regeneratively grown one is full of the same biochemistry, but also has the structured water and the subtle energy nourishment. And so it's why there are practices such as pranayama breathing, or it's why acupuncture was developed, because those needles are essentially antennae that are helping to pull life force from the ether into the physical body where it's lacking. And so those are all ways of using subtle energy to help build the subtle energy body of ours, this life force nourishment that, yes, it physically permeates and nourishes our physical body, but it also is what surrounds our physical bodies as well, in the form of what we currently now refer to as the biofield. And that biofield isn't stagnant. It's a flowing system whereby we have energy around us that then can flow through us, through the meridian system, through this quantum connective tissue water nanotube network, and then again flows out and then flows back in. So these are all connected. And so we got to start viewing nourishment through a much broader lens than just the food that we eat.
Yeah, so energy is coming from so many different places, exactly as you mentioned. And so, yeah, I was also going to ask you about different ways that you're able to get this life force or chi energy, but you already described it. You basically said these different breathing practices or acupuncture, or I can imagine there are many more modalities. And even for fruits and vegetables, you can use electroculture, right? Where you can wrap a copper wire and put it into the earth and maybe add some crystals on there. And the plants grow exponentially bigger, more juicier, with more flavor. and they grow so much faster. And you're wondering, why is that? Like, clearly they're pulling some form of energy, invisible energy that we can't see with the naked eye, into the earth, and it's helping the plant to grow. And basically what you're saying is that we are basically pretty much the same. We just need to figure out ways that we can utilize our body to, you know, generate this energy. Do you think that humming is able to produce this life force energy as well?
Yeah, I do. There's some really interesting modern, I would call it particle physics, right? I'm not a huge particle person, right? In terms of like just, you know, we got a distinct proton and a distinct electron. I think that they're just aggregations of waves in different forms. But there's some very interesting particle research that's being done on something called relic neutrinos, which are in the particle physics world, it's the subtle energy of particle physics. And they have found that oxygen in its many forms essentially hoards or attracts these things called relic neutrinos, also aka subtle energy. So the things that we can do to allow our body to produce oxygen in its various forms, and nitric oxide, that all versions of oxygen, whether it's in its molecular or if it's single state or whether it's attached to another molecule or another atom, all forms of oxygen have the ability to hoard and pull this subtle energy. So again, I think it's why pranayama breathing was working. It's why I think people feel better after hyperbaric oxygen. It's why producing beneficial nitric oxide in the paranasal sinuses has benefits as well. So yeah, I think that anytime we see something that is beneficial to human health that we can't necessarily connect well, there is biochemistry behind humming, right? In terms of the nitric oxide and the vasodilation, calming the nervous system, reducing pain. I mean, there's a lot to that. But I think a missing aspect of this is understanding how we're either pulling in subtle energy to enhance our life force versus the things that we do that leaks the subtle energy and causes us to lose health.
Yeah, lovely put, the way that you said it, you know, leaking energy and gaining energy. And that explains a lot as well about how people who are breatharians, how they can basically go on without eating or drinking, because clearly this explains everything that you just said, is explaining how they're extracting that energy and they're using specific breathing practices in order to harvest that energy. And these individuals, they have to stay in connection with nature, because when they remove them from nature and they try to study them in a lab, they start to become unwell, because it's that artificial blue light, non-native EMFs, you know, it's robbing them that energy. Whereas in nature, it's almost like you're in this equilibrium where you do not need to even expend energy, right? And especially if you don't even have like much muscle, you don't even basically use like so much energy. It's just so easy to basically just maintain your life force energy and your cellular energy, basically. I would love to ask you one last question, because I know we're starting to run out of time. And there's so much that I actually didn't manage to cover today. So we're probably going to do a part 3 in the future. But do you think that sea salt is a sufficient form of like remineralization, or, you know, getting minerals in the body? Or do you think that people need to consume something like shilajit or something like that to get the optimal amount of minerals that they need?
Yeah, sure. So this goes back to, so my observation is that different waters in the body or different parts of the body have a different mineral need. And what I've found is that the waters that actually flow and move in our bodies have such as the blood, the lymph, the fluid around the cells, which is called the interstitial fluid, and the cerebrospinal fluid. Those mimic the mineral composition of the ocean almost exactly to a T. And so I truly believe that when we consume ocean-based minerals, we're nourishing the mineral content and therefore the charge and essentially life force content of those fluids. The cells themselves are these more solid masses that are kind of surrounded by the fluid. And I have found that the cells themselves have a bigger affinity to earth-based minerals. So that would be things like the shilajit or the fulvic and humic minerals. It's why when that fulvic acid delivery system is studied, it literally shows that that fulvic acid holds these minerals and has literally a magnetic draw into the cell. where it gives the minerals to the cell and then can essentially flip polarities and pull toxins out of the cell. So what I consider the cells to be our internal land masses, our internal earth, the dirt, the soil, and they require the earth-based minerals. And I found that a nice blend between the two really works well when it comes to nourishing our mineral-rich bodies. Now, if someone has a dehydrated blood system, I think we need to start there. I typically find that if a client is just generally dehydrated, which oftentimes looks like really aggressive histamine-based symptoms, they need the blood nourishment with something like quinton isotonic, because that particular supplement mimics the blood perfectly. The mineral ratios and the water ratio to the minerals, all of that. So it literally is replacing our blood nourishment. And I'm finding clients need to really build up, my clients in a very depleted state need to build up that mineral and blood hydration. Once that builds up, the capillaries that are by the cells themselves, the capillaries actually can start to take the nourishment from the blood and bathe the fluid around the cells. Once that pathway is open, then I give someone Shilajit, or someone takes Shilajit, or they take another beam minerals like fulvic, humic minerals. Those minerals then can go in and have a better or a more easy transport system to get to the cells to deposit the minerals and remove the toxins. And so it's a fully integrated system. And I think our body, because we are microcosms of the greater macrocosm of Mother Earth, we require both types of minerals.
If there was one substance that could increase your energy levels, optimize mitochondrial function, boost ATP production, help to optimize your hormones, remineralize the body with ionic minerals, boost cognitive function, assist detoxification, and support your gut health via the microbiome, this substance is Shilajit, known as the destroyer of weakness. Shilajit is a herbomineral substance made from the decomposition of plants and bacteria, this process taking place over thousands of years. It is harvested from high altitude locations, primarily the Altai and Himalayan mountains. And what makes Shilajit so unique is that it's made by Mother Nature herself. I call it nature's methylene blue. Not all Shilajit that you find on the market is created equally. This is why I only use and trust Mountain Drop Shilajit. They have an extremely high quality Shilajit product that has been rigorously tested for heavy metals and impurities. Grab yourself some Shilajit, the destroyer of weakness, today and head over to mountaindrop.com. Use the promo code MobilityFitness at checkout for a nice discount as well.
Well, yeah, I mean, minerals are so important for hydration, right? And all of those incredible processes that you just mentioned, because I feel like people think about minerals as just a form of, you know, I just need to put salt in my water or electrolytes, just make sure that the water is not going from one side and leaving the other side of my body. But maybe you could actually explain to people why it's dangerous to drink a lot of water, and especially if it's reverse osmosis water.
Yeah, you know, whenever we would have encountered water in nature, it never would have been just pure water, pure H2O with nothing else in it. We would have likely been, the drinking water that we would have had access to would have been spring water. And so spring water is rich in minerals. And what people misunderstand or mishear when I say that, because they're like, oh, but they're inorganic minerals, the body can't absorb them. That's not what I'm saying. I'm not saying that spring water is our main source of minerals. You know, obviously food has minerals as well. We talked about the salt, the fulvic, the humic. Now, but what's happening with that spring water is that those minerals give that water a charge. Give that water a little bit of an electrical component to it. The body then is more likely to absorb that water into the bloodstream because of the minerals and the charge that those minerals hold. Whereas when clients come to me and they've been drinking literally a gallon or more a day of distilled or reverse osmosis water, those purification methods remove the toxins, but they remove the minerals as well. And so the body is less likely to want to hold on to that water and stay hydrated because it doesn't add minerals to the body or charge to the body. And so these are people who drink this water, tons of it, but they're peeing all the time because their body says, I need to flush this out. This is not true hydration for me. So I absolutely think it's important for people to remineralize their drinking water. Again, we're not talking about drinking Sole or really concentrated salt water. That'll give you diarrhea. But we're talking about making a Sole and taking a few drops of it and putting it into your drinking water to give the water just a little bit of charge so that it's more likely to absorb it into the blood and keep it in the blood and distribute it throughout the body without just automatically flushing it to the kidneys for elimination.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Carrie. This was an absolutely awesome conversation. I absolutely loved it. We definitely need to do part 3 for sure. So everybody definitely stay tuned for that. We will be talking about best hydration strategies, more how to create more living biocompatible type of water in the future for sure. And so where can people find you, connect with you, and work with you?
Oh, well, thank you for this conversation, Andreas. This was such a joy to chat with you as always. My best places to find me are carriebwellness.com. That's where I've got very affordable courses for practitioners and individuals looking to use this information and learn it more deeply to heal. And also Carrie B Wellness on Instagram is my hub where I share this information freely and often, just because I love teaching and educating in these topics.
Wonderful. I can't wait to do it again.
Same.
If you guys enjoy the topics and guests I bring on the show, I would really appreciate it if you left me a 5-star review on Spotify and also subscribe to Fitness Wisdom Podcast on YouTube as well, as this helps to spread the knowledge and wisdom with the world. Until next time, this is the Fitness Wisdom Podcast.